This episode is brought to you by Blue Door Financial. Blue Door Financial will help you save money and reduce taxes to live a fuller financial life. To learn more, visit Blue Door Financial online at BLUdoorfinancial.com. That's BLUdoorfinancial.com. This episode is brought to you by the Lackawanna College Venture Lab. You can build NEPA's next big startup with the help from the Lackawanna College Venture Lab. Designed to help entrepreneurs build micro enterprises, the Venture Lab lets dreamers develop small-scale businesses from the ground up. Network with the lab's experts or your fellow entrepreneurs in a new co-working space at Lackawanna's Scranton campus and apply for a zero-interest microloan while you're there. You can even print 3D prototypes of your new product in their fabrication center. Pretty cool, right? To make your business dreams a reality, visit lackawanna.edu/venturelab or email venturelab@lackawanna.edu. Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with author and speaker, Kelly Rippon. What's up, podcast episode 83 of the On the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio. Welcome to the show, Kelly. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me, Bill. I'm great.
This is exciting. I'm glad you made it in. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the table here that we're going to talk about. You're a published author, which is super exciting, and your 6 children. How did you do it? I mean, you're a mother of 6.
Yes.
How single mother
yes.
of 6?
Yes. As you're doing it, I think my mantra was everything is temporary. And that's what I tell parents today when they're trying to juggle car seats or pull kids into strollers, into grocery carts. Do I put them in school? Do I keep them home? Everything is temporary. So I said something to a friend this morning. One thing I don't miss is having a bunch of kids yell that bees are getting in the car at car pickup because it's September. And I said, one thing that I miss the most are having a bunch of kids in the car crying that there's a bee in the car. So it's a little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing. So temporary. That's the answer.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, 6 kids, they obviously, they range in age. Tell me a little bit about, growing up, raising 6 kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes people will say, well, it's a democracy. It really isn't. It's a momocracy, in my house at least. I set some boundaries, but I never told them what to do. I told them what I expected. And it was really up to them whether or not they fulfilled those expectations of, keeping their room clean or keeping up with their homework or signing up for clubs. I really never, once they were out, once the older boys were into, because I think I was just like all parents are, kind of overzealous in the very beginning, like trying to find a background check on the bus driver and, like really nervous because you're letting that, and the first time my oldest came home and told me how much he loved his kindergarten teacher, and he told me all about the buckles on her shoes and, why don't you wear your hair like Mrs. Goldite? I was like, oh my God, my heart is broken. How am I ever going to, let go? And it is a process of learning to trust your kids' safety, well-being, nurturing with a village, with other people that you find to be safe and nurturing for them. So
it's funny. This kind of comes at good timing for me personally. So I feel like I'm really going to learn a lot from talking to you today. My wife and I, we have a 3-month-old at home, our first. So we just sent Braden to daycare the other week, and it's like, we're going through it.
Yeah, you're checking all the time. Yeah. I remember when I had one child, the day bag or your diaper bag or whatever you call it. I don't know. Do you still call it a diaper bag?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in that diaper bag for Adam, he's the oldest as Adam. I think I had 3 change of outfits, a blanket or 2, about 10 diapers. An entire package, 10.
That's us right now.
Just in case.
Just in case.
And plus, I had like one size up, just in case he grew a lot. Well, the hour that I was gone, right?
Sure, of course.
And then I would have like a back, I of course, when I was pregnant, my child will never have a pacifier. And then once that child was born, I had 10 or 12 in each room of my house. So, and I think
you can never go without, right?
And I'm still finding them. And my baby is 20. So
20 years later.
Yes. So
Yeah.
in that day bag, I had everything you could think of. With my youngest, my 6th, I would grab a diaper and say, you know what? There's paper towels in the ladies' room.
Yeah, or
That was
newspaper.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I didn't have a diaper bag. I just threw a diaper in my purse and, had a
Said a
wet
little
one
prayer.
or something. Yeah, that's it. And, but you really want to be prepared because, it's not, and I explain this to my kids as they are older now. It's not that you want to prevent. It's just that you don't want to get caught like flat-footed, unprepared, right?
Yeah. And how do you do that?
Well, you have to start trusting, instead of trying to do everything yourself, you have to thoroughly vet the people that you surround your kids with. If I'm sure you did your due diligence, if it's a relative or a neighbor or a professional school or daycare center, I am sure you and your wife did your due diligence and made sure that it was the best option, the best choice for you. And you have to trust that.
Yeah. It's tough, but yeah, definitely. And so, being a single mother of 6, I mean, how did you manage the work-life balance?
That's hard. What I say in my book, what I did was I did a collection of part-time jobs. And I don't know if that would be in vogue in 2020 for, a younger mom to want to do that. But for me, it worked because I knew for me, I needed to be present because your children aren't the same. You have your 3-month-old baby. And if you do have others, you're not going to use the same template. You're going to use the same skills. And that's what sometimes I think parents get mixed up with, that just like if you're selling to a client, you might be making posters, but each client is going to be different and they're going to have more attention to particularities about that particular poster. And that's the same thing. You just have to be a great poster maker, just like you just have to be a great parent, because your kids are all going to offer you opportunities for demanding attention in different ways. So I was aware of that, and I knew that it was important for me to be present, not just like in mind and spirit, but actually in physical body. I knew that I needed to get jobs that I could do from home overnight or during the school hours when they were at school. So that's what I did. I tutored taught English as a second language. So the hours were like 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. I did adjunct faculty work so that I was, teaching when they were in school. I was public school substitute teacher, a corporate trainer. So I was going in and doing workshops while the kids were in school, or I was writing scripts for workshops for other people that were teaching and training. So I was able to do a lot of that work from home, just piecing together different jobs. So that worked for me.
To stay present.
Right, because I needed to be able to pivot quickly. And you can't do that if you are working for someone else. You can't pivot quickly. And the most important thing for me was that I needed to have flexibility. Because kids get sick, as you will find out.
Yeah.
And you have to stay home, and you have to work out a plan for that. And for me, it was, and then I had to keep also of my time available so I could travel with Adam. So that was, I wanted to be in person because I've just felt he was just way too young. They have a lot on their mind, young athletes, and there are a lot of people that can take advantage of that ultra focus a young person has, and they lack the maturity. An elite athlete that is 20 really only has the environmentally or social experience of maybe a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. They're behind the regular distractions that somebody would have if they're in school all day.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So,
Okay.
so for the people listening that haven't recognized your last name, your son Adam Rippon is an Olympic gold or Olympic bronze medalist.
Now I love when you keep promoting him. That's
I know. He's been
elevating him to gold.
Adam, if you're
Yes.
listening, you're now a gold medalist, so you're moving up. But let's talk about that a little bit. You know, him as a kid, like how young was he when he started? Like, take me through like the training and like you said, like being there, present, and wanting to travel with him. Like, how did you do that along with everything else?
Right. Well, he was 10 when he started, and in the beginning, he would just take lessons in the morning before school locally, and then I realized that he was, very coordinated and, talented, and he wanted more. So that summer I took him to Philadelphia and tried to find a coach for him. And he was older, almost 11 by the time he found a coach. And not a lot of people wanted to work. It was hard. It wasn't like people weren't saying, pick me, I want to be his coach. It was difficult trying because he was almost 11. And that's, most of the skaters start when they're about 5.
Okay.
So
did they kind of look at it as he was like a little behind?
It'd be a lot of work. They're
To catch up.
11-year-old. Yeah. It would be a lot of work. And they didn't really know me or how dedicated I was to the level of his interest. So it did work out. He was with the same coach for 6.5 years. And then when he was, he made it to nationals every year after this, after 2 years of like really strong training. He left school. He was going to school. I would drive him back and forth to Philadelphia, which was,
a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. And at that time, it was popular. I was life coaching, and I had clients where I was doing that online or on the phone. So trying to kind of blend everything together and balance everything was complicated because in the beginning, I was taking the youngest 2 with me, and then we were driving back because they weren't old enough for school.
So at what point did you realize, like, I'm sure you probably saw the talent from a young age, but at what point did you realize, like, hey, he is like very seriously talented?
Well, I knew he was, talent is one thing. There are a lot of seriously talented people that never make it to the Olympics. You really have to pair super talent or talented with perseverance, because if you don't have the desire and the drive, talent is never, it's going to get you like cool bar stories later in life.
Yeah,
like,
wasted.
hey, I could do a triple axel if I only,
Yeah, remember when?
Right. But there are so many people that do hold that super talent that really never make it to the senior rankings, or because he was national champion, and there are so many people that before he was at that level that we saw have that talent, but just never pushed through to that top 3 at national level.
But he did.
Yeah, he did. He was top 10 in the world for 10 years. So he had a long, steady, there were ups and downs, but when he won Junior Worlds in 2008. And then he was the first person to go back and repeat and win the second gold back to back. So he was junior world champion 2 times back to back in 2008 and 2009. And then in 2010, he was ISU 4 continents champion. And then I think he was 6th at Worlds that year. And then I think that's when 2010 was the first possibility where he was considered he had a shot at making the Olympic team.
So then what happened? Like, what's the process like? I honestly don't really know. Like, does he have to, he tries out? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, back in 2010, it was on the day. Now the process is a little bit different. They consider 2 years of performance. And that's why it was so kind of nerve-wracking, because he did have those elements going into 2010 and 2014, where he had those solid years. When they changed it in 2014, after 2014. He won nationals in 2016, and then in 2017 he's broke his foot on the way to nationals. So he was going to be minus a section of like worlds, 4 continents, and U.S. nationals, 3 really key competitions that were going to be missing from his resume going into the 2018 Olympic trials. But he did well enough in the Grand Prix and in the Grand Prix final and at nationals to merit a spot on the 2018 Olympic team. So that was a happy ending.
Yeah. So what was that experience like watching your son compete in the Olympics?
I talk about it in my book that you think about it, people always say, I saw him because, for 10 years he was in the Grand Prix and he would be on television, during the fall time, when they would do the Grand Prix circuit. And they'd say, is he training for the Olympics? And every single parent that has an elite athlete, they say the same thing. Oh, no, he just skates because he loves it. Even when they're little, girls that are gymnasts or, track and field people, they say, are they or he or she, are they training for the Olympics? Every single parent at that level says, oh, no, they're just doing it because they love it. And that's just it's almost like a taboo to say the word Olympics out loud. And it was so freeing being at the Olympics, seeing the Olympic rings, holding the flag, cheering for our team. It was exhilarating. And 2 of my kids were able to come with me. So my son Brady and my daughter Dagny. And because you only have a few weeks from when they announce the team to get to Korea.
To like plan, book the whole bit?
It's not even planning and booking. It's like, tell us tomorrow if you're going, because there's we can only reserve the room for that long. Yeah. So it's that, especially when they're in a place like Pyeongchang and Gyeongnam, they were like remote areas of South Korea. They weren't like in Seoul, where you could find hundreds of hotels. There are very few, and most of them were purchased by the press. So you really needed to stay in the U.S. sponsored housing. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of, behind the scene things that people don't. I talk about it in my book about the incredible expense. I think it was like $750 a day.
Wow.
For a room. Yeah. So, I mean, you wouldn't think of those things. People think when they see the parents in the stands, I think people think that somehow like they have a sponsor, an Olympic committee or somebody.
Yeah, like a bought and paid for trip.
Yes. And no, they do get, the athletes in different sports do get stipends. And figure skating is a sport that does give the athlete a stipend. And then the athlete they can use that for, their own, to buy souvenirs or, some sort of access that they need, bring a friend or give it to their family or whatever. And he gave us part of his stipend, which helped curtail some of the expenses. But I mean, it's a huge, much worth it though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So how long were you there for?
My kids were there for, I think, 2 weeks. They were there from the opening. We saw the opening ceremonies, which were beyond belief. And they stayed through the team competition and then his individual competitions. The day after his long program, we went to the Olympic Village. We spent the day there and then they went home. So I think it was start to finish. I think they were there about 13 days or so. I was there from the beginning to end, from the opening ceremonies to the closing ceremonies. So I was there with the rest of the time. I was there with his coach's mom, and we were good friends. He had 2 coaches, and one of his coaches, I knew her. She was a principal at the skating club of Washington, and they held a big competition, Cherry Blossom Open, when he was a younger skater. And she was kind of a mentor to me. So it was just full circle that her son, who he had looked up to, who didn't make it to the Olympics, was at the Olympics as one of his coaches. I was with his mom, and we laughed together because we said, here we are 23 days together and we haven't had one fight. Have you ever had a roommate that you've never had a crossword with? And I said, we wake up every day feeling so lucky. And I think that was part of it.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you also have a medal of your own that you got.
Yes.
What's the story behind this?
Well, it is a ceremony that they call the Order of Ecos Medallion. And every Olympic athlete receives a second medal. And it's a medal that they award to the person that has provided the most influence or the greatest support to them, reaching their achievement of an Olympic medal. Most often, athletes, I didn't even know that this existed.
Yeah,
I never heard of it
neither
before. And so most athletes give it to their coach because many times, especially in skating, coaches are former athletes. And many times they are not Olympic athletes. They were, went into coaching as a profession versus going and performing or going into another line of work. It was just that they love skating so much. So they get this, and then they have a ceremony at the USA House. When we were going up there that night, I didn't even know about it until someone was saying, they're going to award the Ecos Medallion tonight. And I had no idea. Now, some of the athletes, the parents that were on the bus with me, they had been to the Olympics before. So they were kind of filling me in on what this whole ceremony was about and why it was important that because it was a terrible snowstorm. And we were driving up the mountain to this because we were the sliding sports like track and skating, hockey, they were down in the coastal cluster. But the alpine sports were up in the mountains. So that is where the USA House was, like the skiing and downhill and stuff. So so we went there, and he gave a big speech. He was the last. I saw a few of his teammates give their medals to their coaches. And then he got up to speak, and he went on about thanking everyone. And then he said, and I couldn't have done this without my mom, and gave me the medal. And I was in such absolute shock. I had nothing, like I could not, words couldn't come out. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So what happened next?
He started telling a story about that I was an influence. And because this medal is given to the person of influence, so he started telling a story about how I had predicted that he was going to be a champion a long time ago, which really isn't true. I did write what they call now a prophecy on the back deck. And there's a picture of it in my book, and it says, I wrote it just to kind of let the kids keep track of who was going to be in the house after I got divorced, because I didn't want them to think that their dad was going to come back and stay in our house, that he was going to have his own house. And I wanted them to be comfortable with that and to get used to it as a normal thing, So I wrote on the back deck, in this home lives Adam, a champion, Tyler, a creator, Brady, a genius, Jordan, a master teacher, Dagny, a leader, Sawyer, a multitude of joy, and Kelly, who's blessed with abundance. I wrote that in the back. And I didn't want to just write like a role, like a clinical, like alphabetical or whatever. I thought if I put a moniker with their names, that it would inspire them. But I didn't want to put is going to be, so it would be predictable or expected. I wanted to put a name that I felt they already were. So there was no stress on becoming anything. You already are this. So whether you do anything with it, it's up to you. So I said, Adam, a champion, And he grew to be national champion and 2-time world champion and 4 continents champion and, Olympic bronze medalist. And my second creator has created an incredible job. But as I say, he's off the grid, so I don't want to discuss it. And then Brady, a genius, he majored in physics and calculus and then went to Columbia and has an awesome career in research and biostat. So, all of these things that I said, that I laid out, the kids kind of drove into that lane, like master teacher. Jordan has been teaching. She's a theater major with an MFA, and she will probably fall into theater arts, academia somewhere. Dagny's in law school, the leader. Multitude of Joy is still a multitude of joy, but yet still not at that age where I'm forgiven for talking about him publicly. So
what else can you say about him right
that's
now?
Right.
It's embarrassing.
That's exactly right. But he's an incredible young man. So, so I wrote that. Adam started blabbing about it all over the place. And then people said, you should write a book about that.
Is that how this all started?
Yes.
This is a good segue to the book.
Yes.
So
that's exactly how you planned it, I'm sure.
Yeah. People are going to think this is scripted.
In the book, there is a picture of the deck. So I started thinking about it.
And this is a real wooden deck.
Yes, it is.
At first, when you were saying deck, I don't know what I was thinking, but for some reason, I don't think I was picturing this is like a deck on your house.
Yeah, it's 30 feet long that I wrote that. There's a lot of kids. I need a lot of space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I wrote that, and it stayed there for, probably a dozen years or more. And I didn't really notice it because it just became part of the background. When I walked in, you asked me about different things in your office. And I said, I'm a big picture. I really didn't notice the detail. I really did not notice the detail of that. But I do believe that when you surround yourself, you start with reminders of all of the gifts or talents that you may have or the possibilities that you have, you're more confident about them. And you can take them in any direction, because I did not say a champion of the ice. He could have been, a champion card player or, a firefighter. He could have been many different things. And leader doesn't mean law school. Or, leader could have been the leader of a band or, a leader of, some sort of tech company or something. So they were very vague. Well, all I provided was a frame, and then they were to fill in the details. So, and we never spoke about it. The kids never asked me what it was. They never asked me why I wrote it. It was just there. It was like not so much the elephant in the room, but it was the message on the deck.
It's interesting.
And it was just, of course, Adam's a champion. Of course, Brady's a genius. Of course, Dagny's a leader. Of course, Jordan's a master teacher. Like, it was just, yes, we agree. Like, nothing to think about here.
It didn't need to be talked about.
That's right. Now, on the other hand, when people would come to my house,
then they would ask about it, I'm sure.
But I would let them, my garage I had crazy graffiti written all over my garage. This is how I was my therapy. And I say in the book that Home Depot became my counselor. I would just go to Home Depot and fill the cart up with tiles and markers and paints and putty and just go have at it with positivity and start putting things all over my house. To spark, that sense that, but I don't have to wait for better times. Better times are now, like this second. And I think that I heard somebody say to me once, they were arguing, and I didn't say anything because they knew I just got divorced. And they said, don't worry, once we get married, we're going to be so happy. And I thought, ouch. That, once you, when you think one day, it's always going to be in front of you. You're never going to be able to sit in it and enjoy it. So that's what I decided at that time, that it's about the journey, and I better keep my eyes open. I better write it down. I better start engaging and not worry so much about getting that spectacular 6-figure job so that I can have no memories and anxiety at the end of the, of course, who knows about other things, like things that happen down the road. But for me at that time, it was just so important to be available, to really feel like what I was doing was excellent.
And what were some of those other projects that you did? You said you went to Home Depot, you filled up the cart. Like, what else did you do?
Well, in my garage, I painted like a graffiti. My entire garage is like in neon colors, and it says, "Live in color, dream in gold." And they were in my garage. And then throughout the house, I would, lead with love. Mistakes are learning or experience. I put these little sayings all throughout the house. And I would have things like, instead of the radio on, I would have like Stephen Covey on in the car. And like the kids would be, sharpen your saw, it's a win-win, you start at the end. So it wasn't just me. It wasn't like I was some great philosopher, but I brought those people in to be my helpers. So they were able to listen to people like Stephen Covey or other people that had sound advice.
So you kind of planted the seeds.
Yes, and at the same time was sharpening my own saw. Because you can't, they say when you're feeling down, stay there and help somebody else up, and they'll bring you with them. So that's what I did. I didn't fight, not feeling like I wasn't getting what I wanted, because I think we all, like, when we have a bump in our life, we feel kind of not cheated, but feel left out. And there's a big difference. Cheated is more of an angry feeling. Left out is more of a melancholy, kind of sad, rejected feeling. And I think for me, it was important to dilute that feeling as much as possible. And the only way you can feel grateful is to move into small steps. Like my goal was not paint the house. My goal was get out of bed, take a shower, make sure everybody's fed. Like, my goals in the beginning were very, very small.
Was there a time in your life personally that you felt down, that you got through something?
Of course. You know what? I'm human. I'm not, some kind of super machine, but I think it's easier, as when, I know people that are terrified of dogs until they have a baby. And then they're walking down the street with a stroller and a dog comes, and I have never seen them as brave in their life. And I think that was such a blessing for me, because it was an opportunity for me to quit and just move away and start over, or make something incredible with what was in front of me. And that's what I chose to do.
And how does somebody do that?
Oh my. Let's
really
see.
Deep
Book
here.
number 2.
Yeah. So that's gonna be in book number 2.
No, I don't know.
We're skipping a whole chapter here.
What I think for me, what I did was I utilized some of the best practices, because I was doing a lot of corporate training, and I took a lot of those practices from the corporate world into the way I was parenting and the way that I was living my own life and setting my own expectations, being my own project manager, so to speak, and using like those incremental changes, the agile system of making sure everybody's on the same page, moving 2 more steps ahead, checking everybody's on the same page, moving ahead. And instead of getting to the end and looking back to see who you left behind. I think that really worked for me. And I think just like actively listening instead of trying to finish my kids' sentences, letting them set their own goals and letting them fail, and not getting alarmed. If they came home with a 60 on a Spanish test, they were, I'd say, what's the matter? And they were like in tears because they had a 60 on their Spanish test. And I tried to make them understand the perspective of one test in 9th grade that no one's ever going to remember, but you're always going to remember how you feel. And that's the thing. Like feelings, we can recall them so easily. Sometimes we can't recall the details around those feelings, but we can recall those feelings. Now, did you ever go back to the school that maybe you were in when you were in elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay. As an adult, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. When you walked in, all the smells were the same?
Yeah.
Like the waxed floor or the carpet shampoo or whatever. All of those things, we store those things and they become embedded memories. And then when we have a trigger like that, re-experience, they all come back. But you might not remember the names of the kids that were around you or some of the details, but those feelings are going to be stored with different sensory cues. So I was mindful of that. And I reminded, my kids to have like that full experience. And I knew when they had a great experience, I would sweeten it with like a cake. We had a cake for like just about every accomplishment you could ever think of. I would get a cake. And it was part of that multisensory experience. But there was always a lesson in there. One of the lessons I talk about in the book is cake was an opportunity for me to tell them about fairness and to be optimistic. And how I would do that is I would tell them that they could have, before I'd cut the cake, I would tell all of the kids they could have as much as they wanted. And they understood that. Then I would cut the slices in random sizes. Now, the 10-year-old may get a sliver, but the 2-year-old may get a slice 5 times the size. And then I would just wait for one of them. Usually one of the present day lawyers, right? The arguers, right, would say, that's not fair. That, wait a second, he's 10 and she's only 2. She can't finish that. That's not fair. That's why. And I would say, what do you mean it's not fair? Didn't I say you could have as much as you wanted? Yes. And then I would say, does it matter how big the first piece is if you can have as much as you want? So that was always a lesson to be confident enough and be optimistic enough so they never felt cheated. When they saw, say if they were trying out for the same part in a play and their friend or someone they didn't even know got the part and they got a different part, they wouldn't feel slighted or cheated. They would know that it will come around, that they will get the bigger piece at another time. Because I would reaffirm the idea that there was enough success, just like cake, for everyone. So don't get focused on what you have right now, but you have to live with the idea that there's enough for everyone.
I love that.
That's so important, though, with kids, because I do think one thing this society reminds us about is what's lacking, what you're being, when I just feel like a chill when I hear people say the pandemic has cheated our kids. And I think it has forced us to live differently. And we've all had different kinds of losses. I shared, I lost my mom to COVID. But this pandemic has been an opportunity for the greatest generation to be created because they're not only resilient, they're patient, they're clear thinkers, they're critical thinkers. They have to be aware of more details. They can't be so big picture focused. The big picture part kind of keeps their stress manageable, but the detail is what's keeping them alive, right? And I do think that the pandemic and the pressures of society today are inviting young people to be the greatest generation. And I would hope that more parents would enable that to happen and stop whispering to their kids that they have such a hardship because they're sitting in front of a Mac at home. That's not hardship.
No, it's
right?
not. Let's talk a little bit more about the book. Adam wrote the foreword of the book, and some of the words that stood out to me were optimism, confidence, empathy, kindness, responsibility, accountability.
And I'm going to have to call the plagiarism police because they're the titles of the chapters, but or some of the chapters. But yes, the great part of it was this. I was asked to do this in 2018. The first draft of the book, the agent said to me, you know what? This is very clinical. It sounds like a best practices corporate style. We want more stories. So then I thought, well, these aren't just my stories. They involve other people. How do you share a story about a temper tantrum? Or how do you share a story about a disappointing experience or an exhilarating experience of achieving something? How do you share that when it's not just yours? So I said, I'm going to have to interview all of my kids and ask them for permission of what I'm allowed to say in their comfort zone and what they want me to omit. So I met with all of them. And the nice thing about this parenting book is it's more of a leadership book, leadership concept book, because you don't have to be a parent to be a leader. And we have the invitation to parent every day. When someone asks us for advice, or there are people that I reach out to that are not my parents, but I need that reassurance, or I need that just open ear, without judgment. I need those things in my life. I think we all do. So this book is not just for like the milestones in each child's development. This is not what this is about. This is about a philosophy that can help your kids grow up to be less stressed and to think big. All of my kids never thought of holding back and then maybe one day I'll try something. But for now, I'm just going to go in a circle. They tried and they failed at things, or they tried not so much. Failing is practicing for winning, right? So, but they did things that they weren't a good fit. One of my kids went into business, had an MBA, and then decided, you know what, I think I'd rather be a lawyer, and then continued on and went to law school. So there are always, and with Adam, his whole life has been dedicated to athletics, and he's a great performer. When he was, he could do ice shows anywhere in the world, but he loves being in entertainment and writing. And so he's kind of gone in a different direction than what he has done all his life. So I think those are the things that, just have the confidence to put some life living into your life, just don't exist.
Yeah. And we haven't said the name yet, by the way. So I'm going to say it's called Parent Up.
Right.
And don't be fooled by the title, because as you just explained, it is not just for parents.
That's right.
It's a leadership book.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
And sometimes I think for me, and I'm biased, obviously, because I'm a woman. Okay, so I'm a little bit biased, but I do think it's a pick me up. It's a book that can lift you, because it is a very fast read. There are people that I'll do something and they'll say, send me your book. And then they'll go through it and just highlight it, because they look at it and they think like 200 and some pages. I'm never going to get through this. This is too boring. What do I want to know? And then they say it's like having a quick conversation. I was able to get through it, and I think the audio is maybe about 7 hours or so. Oh, and it's available on audio. So
there we go.
Yeah. And Adam actually reads the foreword.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, because he wrote it.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? He was a hands down. He didn't have to try out, I guess, because he's a celebrity. But I actually had to audition for the role of Kelly Rippon.
No way.
I did.
You had audition for yourself?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is great.
Yeah. So, and I made the cut. So.
That's great.
I called him. I said, guess who's going to be playing the role of your mother? Me.
In your own book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. So what's Adam up to these days besides starring in Taylor Swift videos?
Oh, you like that? Yeah?
Yeah. Well, my wife's a Swiftie, so.
Oh, well, one thing, I did see what is the award with the astronaut?
MTV? Is it MTV
Yeah,
Awards?
is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. they all, because she won Best Video. So every single person in the video was awarded that. So she made sure of that. So your wife is loving the right person because she's a good heart.
Yeah.
So, and everyone that was in the video, from what I understand, I was not there, so I don't know her. So, but everybody that was there said, how gracious and generous she was with her time, and made sure that everyone was acknowledged for the video. So
that's cool.
yeah.
So what else is he up to?
Well, he's engaged. Yeah, so I don't want to break anybody's heart out there.
Oh.
And he is engaged to a awesome man that they've been seeing each other now for almost 4 years. So I guess it's pretty serious when you're engaged.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. He's from Finland. And so JP, and he's still in Finland. We're dealing with COVID, obviously. So when all of those arrangements can be made, then they'll be getting married. But he's working on different shows. He has a show on MTV.
I saw
Messiness, with Nicole. I don't forget her last name, and Tori Spelling. And he's been writing and doing things. Sometimes people say, Adam was at my university, and I'd be like, what? So I don't know his schedule.
Like you said, we were talking before we came on the mics. You were trying to get a hold of him
today. I was. You know what?
Adam, answer your phone.
I know. He will say, when we get on the phone, we're on the phone for maybe like 2 hours plus. Okay. And I know when he sees my name, because usually I would text, but when he knows that I'm calling him, I think his brain says, I don't have 2 hours to talk. If he actually sees it. Most of the time, I think his phone is off and he's driving or he's working, right? But today I wanted to ask him a question. And then I had to clarify. This isn't for a talk. I don't want to catch up. I just want to ask you one question. So obviously he was not around, or he would have answered me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you've taught your kids obviously a lot of lessons. Mm-hmm. Are there any lessons that your kids taught you?
Yes. Many. My daughter is repeating everything. And I sometimes it's just too painful to listen to myself. How did they do it? Because she will say, do you hear how you're talking to yourself? Oh my, or she will say, is that the best decision you would make today? What? Where did you learn that? Well,
so these are things you've been saying to them.
Of course. Yeah. One thing I did learn is not to take things personally, because I do think we get ultra focused on, are we making mistakes, or are we doing...
Yeah, are we going to look silly doing that?
Yeah. And I did learn, and I don't know if that's just growing older or getting feedback, because you get feedback from 6 different channels all the time, and you'll find that out.
Yeah, very soon.
But one thing is, and I say this especially now with people having their kids going to college for the first time, and I've been doing some workshops about that, working with parents that are really struggling, wanting to visit their kids and think it's cool to just show up at Penn State with a box full of cookies. They love it when I show up. And I'm like, no, they don't love it, and you're hurting them. And we, without knowing it, you're enabling your kids to be socially incompetent. And you want kids to grow confidence. And what better way is to make mistakes around people who are just as incompetent as you are, a bunch of other 18 and 19-year-old kids. So letting the kids make the schedule of communication is better. And I would tell parents, learn Snapchat, learn Instagram, make sure that you can communicate on back channels with your kids. Don't like their Instagram. If you are following them, don't be upset if they have a private account that you're not a part of. You're not supposed to be. I've never read any of my kids' diaries. I don't know, still to the day, any of their passwords for anything. They were supposed to say, I would hope not awful things, but they were supposed to say critical and sometimes hypercritical things of me for practice, so that they could critically evaluate relationships with other people. So when your kids are like that, don't interfere, because then they'll start criticizing people that really don't involve them, like teachers or friends or, other authority figures. So let them privately be critical of you,
Yeah.
But I think it's because I had so many. If I only had one or two kids, I think I still might be bruised over it, But the more you do something, the higher your efficacy gets. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But
Yeah.
they do. Plus, they're knowledgeable. I will ask them questions about, because I will say something like, I'll ask one of my kids who's a lawyer and very knowledgeable about taxes and stuff, contracts, and I'll say, could you look, I cannot be your lawyer. I am not your lawyer. Like that, he will say that. And I'll say, I just have a question about the law. No, I'm sorry. I cannot be your lawyer. It's just, it can't represent you. I'm like, oh, brother, Or I'll ask Adam a question about, do you think this is a fair, for a speaking thing? I cannot represent you, Mom. I'm not. Yeah. I think you should do whatever you feel is right.
Yeah, I'm not your agent, Mom.
Oh, my. Yeah. So that, sometimes you want just that, yeah, sure, that agreeable thing, but then they get all ethical on you and you're like, oh, brother, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the corporate speaking engagements that you do. What is it that you do?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what it is. Sometimes I will go into, in the day when we were going into companies, I would go in, and sometimes companies would have onboarding for orientations, or they would have different festivals for different, like health week or whatever. And I would go in and give a motivational speech. And I talk about like building teams, like an Olympic team, how to get people to partner with you. Sometimes I would go in to do conflict resolution, negotiation, de-escalation, active listening. So I would do primary principles as like an in-service for some companies, and that would be over a period of time. Sometimes I would just go in. One exciting job that I had, I actually spoke at the State Department down in Washington, D.C. So that was super exciting, and it was in a large
secret
theater.
Or what?
It wasn't top secret. It was, most of the people were foreign service, but it was about being present without being present. So a lot of them travel on a moment's notice, and sometimes they're in situations where they really can't give too much detail to their families, and then sometimes the entire family moves. So it's about uprooting and feeling home, making things. So it was just I learned so much. But it was in a large auditorium, a lot of people. They treated me, they gave me the tour, and I got to eat lunch in the State Department cafeteria. For me, it was like a huge, exciting day. So, but I mean, I've done other things, people will have workshops or panels, and sometimes I'll be asked to do author things. A few companies like Prudential or Barclays, I have gone for their national conferences where I would speak on behalf of like identifying kids that are being bullied, or things like, different things about parenting. So it depends on what it is, but mostly in that feeling good healthcare track, or educational, or parenting space, or leadership. So those are the things that I've done. And then I do some keynotes. I have one in October that I'm giving out in California. So that's exciting. It's to celebrate diversity and inclusion in October. So that's exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, how can someone book you?
You can find me on my website, or I'm also represented by Harry Walker. You can contact them, but it's probably fastest to go or my Instagram. At Rippon, that has everything. Everything you need to know, including all my favorite recipes, which is 0 because I'm a terrible cook.
0.
It's like bologna sandwich. Yeah. So no, I'm kidding. I don't even like bologna, and I don't even know how to make a bologna sandwich.
So someone can go on your website, which is just kellyrippon.com.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check you out on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is very current. And actually, I do a lot of podcasts. So you can, follow me along, and I'll usually tell people on Instagram what podcast I'm on. And I have a podcast, The Trophy Life.
I was going to ask you. That was my next question. Can we talk about that?
Yes, it's on hiatus right now. My last interview was during the Paralympics, and the after story is going to come out probably this week. But I've been working on a special project with another person, and hopefully that's going to come out in December.
So that's top secret?
Well, it is top secret because it involves somebody who has been a leader and a huge influencer, and he does not know about it yet.
Okay.
So
it's me, everybody. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So we're working on that, and then but I am starting the Good Sport or parenting workshops, and what I've been offering is different camps, hockey teams, soccer teams, skating clubs, gymnastics, cheer camps, competitive dance studios, offering, our kids are getting trainers, physical therapists, nutritionists, and parents are really stressed out. And it's just nice to have a place for parents to work together, to listen to each other without worrying about getting our kids to the next thing. So I started some parenting workshops and with a group in Florida, and they were very successful. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this nationally. So I just started today. It was actually my first day where
Awesome.
I started promoting it. And I brought some of the cards with me today so you could see.
Very cool.
But they are about providing parents an opportunity so that they can communicate better with coaches and athletes and other parents. I don't know, your baby is a little bit young, but I think swimming starts somewhere around 3 months, right?
Start when they're young.
Well, you know what? Sometimes even pick up or even waiting at the doctor's office, there is an element of competition. And you're going to find that some parents are just super competitive. And there is a clean competition or a clean idea of competing. And then there are people who are comparisoners. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Explain it.
Comparing yourself and comparing others against you and competing with them is a little bit different. And the comparing it's almost like, remember when you were little and they had Bob would come out. I think Bob was hopefully still on Sesame Street when you were a little boy. And he would come out and he'd be like, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is just not the same. Okay, well.
That was good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And then you had to choose which one didn't belong, right? So I think sometimes we have that in our heads. And parents, when they compare, they immediately think what's less about you instead of how we're the same. So in these workshops, it is kind of like a way of taking the stress out, taking that urge to compare, and taking the weight off. Like, what you're investing is not in a future Olympics. Like, take that pressure off. You're not investing in, being in New York City Ballet. What you're investing is in the habit of practicing excellence. So, when parents were stressed out, and that's how this started, coaches reached out to me and said, I don't want the kids to fall behind, but parents are not understanding that having a ballet on Zoom is worth the money. How are they learning anything? And I said, because they don't see the physical, it's not, there's not enough dimension to it. And I started talking to the parents about, your investment isn't in getting to New York City Ballet. Your investment is making sure that your kids have a willingness to learn. And now they're learning a completely different way of taking criticism and feedback, right? and they're practicing being better than they were the day before. And all of those things will carry into being a great business owner, being a great nurse, being a great teacher, being a great scientist, being a great lawyer, being a great judge. All of those things that you learn at the ballet studio, at the rink, on the football field, and the baseball field, on the track, will help you be better at everything, because it teaches perseverance. It teaches the ability to take in criticism, not as an insult, but as critical feedback to improve.
Awesome. I love it. I learned a lot today.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, right?
Yeah, I'm sure our listeners did too.
Speaker/educator.
Yeah. This was really cool. This was awesome. So how can somebody buy Parent Up?
You can buy it anywhere, but the nice thing right now is that Amazon is running a lot of books that are Olympic related are on great sales.
Super sales.
So on Amazon, they do have, especially if groups wanted to buy it for their club, they can get a group rate on Amazon. But you can buy it at BAM or Target, books or Barnes and Noble, all of the small indie bookstores. Especially coming up, we're going to have Indie Book Week, and so if you have an independent bookstore, reach out to me, because I would be glad. And if you have viewers that own independent bookstores, I would be glad to sign book plates and send them to them so that they can put them in the books.
Awesome.
So they'd be signed.
And if you guys want to hear Kelly's voice again, they can listen to the audio version, right?
That's right. Yeah. You know what?
If they didn't get enough of your voice yet.
Well, I listen to myself, because there is nothing, when I have I have clients as well. And I tell my clients, say something really nice about yourself and listen to it. Because when it comes in your own voice, you believe it, because we believe it when we say, oh, I'm so lazy. Oh, I look terrible in this dress. This makes me look fat. I have whatever. You believe it when you say it. So wouldn't it be awesome if you said something like, people like me. The world is on my side.
Or I'm the best podcaster in the world.
Can't so far, so good. And yeah. I've been with a few pretty good ones. So
how did I do?
I think you're A+.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Adam, if you're listening, answer your phone. Your mom's been calling.
Yes.
So we'll leave it there until Adam calls back. All right. Kelly Rippon on the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door Studio. Her book, Parent Up, Inspire Your Child to Be Their Best Self, available now for purchase. Make sure you pick it up today. Kelly, and thanks again for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag On the Stacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on the Stacks.